Good evening, folks, and welcome to another episode of Undercover ET. So it's just a re-recording, really, of the interview with Courtney Brown. I hope you guys enjoy it, and let me know what you think in the comments. Many thanks, all.
Science and theory of non-physical perception. Remote viewing is how they, or telepathic communication, that's how they communicate. No one's ever gone onto a ship and had English spoken to them. And they communicate fine with that. But in the Earth environment among humans, we totally rely on the five physical senses. So the real question is, why is that the case? Why is it so difficult for us to understand remote viewing? Because it's like breathing to everybody else in the galaxy. So that is because this particular planet is being run as a prison by a select group of extraterrestrials who we call the bad ETs. Now there are also good ETs, but they're not the ones running the planet. They they have written agreements, the bad ETs, with the US government and a few other governments to operate here in the Earth environment in exchange for technology transfer with ships, ET ships that have been basically shot down and crashed UFOs, and they want to be able to weaponize that stuff. And the bad ETs have made written agreements with the U.S. government and a few other governments to help them do that in exchange for the ability to operate in the Earth environment. And so this those bad ETs are they're the ones that run this place as a prison. Now, this is something that has been talked about, the written agreements by Chaim Ashed. Chaim Ashed is the former CEO, head of the Israeli Space Directorate for 30 years. Chaim Ashed is also a decorated general in Israel, and also he's currently a professor. So he has acknowledged clearly, he thought he was going to get away with it by talking about it in Hebrew in Israel, but I guess he skipped he wasn't thinking clearly because it turned out that lots of people know Hebrew and they immediately translated it into every other language. So he spilled the beans. But the very fact that there are written agreements between these extraterrestrials, that's why the secrecy agenda is so big. It's part of the written agreements that they must maintain secrecy, must maintain
Okay.
secrecy. And so the remote viewing is a process that is necessary because the people that are kept here in the prison planet are processed after death, and in a way that I can talk about that later, but in a way that essentially destroys their normal telepathic and remote viewing capabilities that they would normally have if they were not here.
Now, are we all humans by nature? Are our souls humans, or are we all different species on this earth as humans because we're prisoners here?
You're all humans on Earth because you're prisoners here. Everybody came from somewhere else. Nobody on this planet came from here. Yet here is where we think the science courses. I do not teach any of this or talk about any of this at my university. I'm a college professor, but colleges are absolutely forbidden to talk about any of this stuff. Even though there have been congressional hearings on the UAP or UFO phenomenon, but everybody came from somewhere else and nobody evolved here. And
So
so
were we sent here because we did something wrong?
there's most people here, I guess, in way into the upper 90s, were sent here. But it's not because you did something wrong. Maybe some people didn't pay their taxes. Maybe some people looked at some bureaucrat's spouse with a sexy eye. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's totally arbitrary. It's a totalitarian fascist regime out there in the galaxy. Not everywhere. That there are good ETs where that doesn't happen, but and you do anything wrong, here you go. This planet has the absolute highest proportion anywhere in the galaxy of creatives also. So if you think about people who are artists and inventors and scientists, they get banished out there because what happens is if you have a civilization that's been around for a million years, then everything that can be invented has already been invented, and there's a cash cow going. I mean, they're just they don't want to ruffle the guard. And I'll give you a good example. Socrates, back in the old days of Aristotle and Plato, Socrates was put to death. Now, what did he do? Well, he went down to the market and asked people questions to get them to think. That was it. That was it. That's all he did. And they put him to death. So when you get creatives wanting to change things and everybody is set, they really are irritating. And a lot of artists, what do people do when they do art? They don't all just paint pictures of flowers. They're revolutionaries. They're trying to change things. And reinvent the wheel. That's what these creatives do. And so eventually these societies say these are bothersome people and they just kick them out. So we have some of the highest proportions in we probably have the highest proportion in the entire galaxy of extremely brilliant people, creatives. I'll give you an example. Newton. Take a look at Newton, for example. Newton created the calculus. Well, Leibniz did it simultaneously with him, but Newton created the calculus and all of classical physics in just a few years of his life. A few years of his life, so it wasn't the whole life.
Yeah, so he
That's
just
it.
remembered.
Yeah, you can't do that. You can't create. It takes like a few thousand years to slowly figure all that stuff out. But he was remembering. He thought he was figuring it out and thinking it out, but in reality, he was remembering. That's the key. And so, he didn't remember that he came from somewhere else, but that's basically what everybody is in a situation. But that also means that a very high proportion of the population relative to the galactic standards are perverts and sick people. That's why we have school shootings. That's why we have, really perverted stuff that you see on television, on the YouTube and stuff like that, of people doing bad things. um, those people are not tolerated elsewhere, and they just throw them out. And now an ISB cannot die. So where do you throw them? You have to throw them into some place where they get recycled and they get kept. And Earth is operated as a prison, and people don't get out of it once they get into it. They get recycled. Their memories get wiped every time they die. And so, and then the prison wouldn't work if they still had their normal telepathic and remote perception, remote viewing capabilities, because they could obviously see things. So that has to be zapped out. So, that's what's different. And humans can train to get those capabilities back. And that's what we do at Farsight. We have some of the very highest trained individuals who have been working at this for like a decade on how to do this. And they are fully professional. They get paid to do this. They're not like doing it as a hobby. And they are the best remote viewers that you can find anywhere. And in addition, they're they're professional in terms of presenting the remote viewing stuff, and we have studios and the proper equipment to do it in a way that's entertaining to watch. Because if you're trying to convince the entire planet that this is real, you can't show somebody writing on a piece of paper with a pen and let that go on for a few hours. You have to actually be able to do this in an entertaining way. So we have studios, and then we have people do all of their remote viewing under totally blind conditions. And when they do their stuff on video, which is the last stage, they're the only ones in the studio. Nobody else is there. And we have like 4 or 5 people doing these things, and they all get the same stuff. So even the idea of corroborating reports, it's like crazy. They're doing everything totally blind. They're not told anything at all. And they all come up with the exact same stuff. Like what? That gives you an idea how good this stuff can get. And yeah, and so our procedures are derivative of those that were originally developed by the United States military and used for espionage purposes, but they've evolved way beyond that as well.
All
I can
right.
tell you, where, if you ask, I'll tell you where these new procedures came from. But that's what we do.
Okay. Did they come from the Emerald tablets at all, or?
No, we started with the original military stuff to get us going, and then the extraterrestrials themselves, who we work with groups that are called the good ETs. They have been helping us from. We kept this secret for a long time, but since the late 90s, they've been helping us a lot. And so we have
Or
actual,
they're getting closer, aren't they?
well, they're here. We have actual meetings with them on a regular basis, like physical meetings. And so, but they're trying, they're,
just just wanted to give you guys a little breather. So um, yeah, bombshell right there. Uh, in a nutshell, for folks that are a little bit behind with what he said, he's saying that there's two sides to these ETs. There's the bad side and a good side. We're apparently controlled by the bad side, and the good side want to help. Apparently, we're prisoners on this planet, going through a recycling system, which means we come straight back once we die. Um, we can't be killed, which is why we're in the recycle system. I guess when we do die, we take the form that of what we are. So there's a few bombshells here, folks, and it all revolves around these ETs, honestly. So keep listening. I'm going to keep going, and let's delve into it just a little bit more. But hats off to Conflict Radio and Courtney Brown for sharing this information, especially Courtney Brown if it is what it is. I think is insanely um, informative, this interview, and we should keep watching. So I hope no one is annoyed that I've just recorded this for this channel, but I came across it, and normally I wouldn't do this, but it's amazing, folks. It's absolutely amazing, and I think if I'm going to share any channel, it'll be this one. So let's go.
when you see the UAPs, UFOs being shot down, the ET crafts and David Grush has been reporting about the U.S. crash retrieval program. He's got military clearance, Pentagon clearance, and he still has that. And he's given testimony in front of Congress, both privately and in public hearings, about the crash retrieval program. Well, just think of this: if there are extraterrestrials that have ships, do you think they can fly across the entire galaxy and get here safely? And then as soon as they get here, they crash, like the motor breaks? Do you think they have bad mechanics? Do they need to go to Pep Boys or something to get better mechanics to keep them from flying? So no, it's what happens is those ships are being shot down. They're being shot down by the American secret space program. And that's again with technology that has been given to them by the bad ETs. Now, the bad ETs cannot shoot down the good ETs because then it would change what's currently a Cold War into a hot war. And they don't want to do that. But they can give the tech to the American secret space program, and that the American secret space program shoot down the ships. So every year, a few of these ships get shot down and crash. And that type of thing has been going on for quite a while. But the idea of the crash retrieval program, if you know anything about anything, it's not in dispute. They have congressional hearings. You can see those on YouTube. I mean, David Grush has been talking about it, but a lot of other people have been talking about it as well. So that is a thing. So the real question is, where do these ships come from? Well, these are the good ETs that they're shooting down. They're not shooting down the ships of the bad ETs. So, and the good ETs, sometimes they get drawn into situations where they're vulnerable, and boom, they get shot down.
All
They
right, let me.
cannot defend themselves. They could easily eliminate the entire American secret space program in a blink of an eye. But they don't want to do that because then they would be seen as aggressors, and then the Americans would be thrown further into the hands of the bad ETs. They're trying to free the planet from the bad ETs. So when they get attacked, they just have to let it happen and deal with the consequences.
Okay, let me ask you this: how many species of bad ETs do we have on the planet right now?
It's the same. The good ETs and the bad ETs are the same. They have a mix of species on both sides, but they're the dominant one of the food chain is the reptilians, and that's on the bad ET side.
What about
And
the vril? Do you know about the vril?
how do you spell that?
VRIL.
That's what I thought. No, I don't know that particular name. What do you? How would you
It's
describe them?
it's it's sort of a it's a it's a alien that shoots a parasite into your eye where it could take over control of the human body. Have you heard of this?
No, I haven't heard of that. But the ETs have the bad ETs use tech all the time that can manipulate people.
Yeah.
You don't need a parasite to do that. The good ETs are what I would call fanatics with respect to free will. They are really free will fanatics, meaning they won't do anything unless you agree to the whole thing. The bad ETs are just the opposite, and they manipulate. The bad ETs have the human leadership, and I'm talking all major government, corporate, media people. They have them under total control. Some of it's blatant bribery, fear, intimidation. Otherwise, it's mental manipulation. And the good ETs are opposed to all of that. The good ETs have been trying. They have no access. The good ETs have no access to the major political and military uh, top dogs, but they might have some access to some of the military. I take that back because half of the military is absolutely opposed to what's going on with the bad ETs. The other half of the military, and I don't know if the percentages are exactly half, but the other part of the military is in favor of this because they want that tech. So the good ETs are in a situation where they really don't have any access to the political leadership and the corporate leadership. So what they have been doing is working with the masses. What they have been doing is one of the things they have been doing is to take the media, the script writers, and things like that, and put give them information about ideas, things that are going on in their head when they're sleeping. And then when they wake up, then the scriptwriter says, "Oh, that's such a great idea for a new show. What an episode! How big this is going to be!" And what you get is a brand new movie. Now, the 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 good ETs will not force the scriptwriter to do that, but they can drop the idea in during sleep, and then it's up to the scriptwriter and themselves to decide whether they're going to pursue that. But that's what's been going on, and that's where Star Trek came out of. That's where Star Wars came out of. That's where the Matrix movies came out of. All you have no idea how many zillions of science fiction type of stuff came out of that. And fundamentally, the masses have been transformed. They're ready to talk about the extraterrestrials, intergalactic conflict. They're ready to talk about all that stuff. The bad ETs don't want any of that thing to happen, but they can't stop the good ETs from sort of doing that type of influence with the media. Anyway, so that's what's going on. We have a Cold War, and the Cold War is going to end pretty soon, and it's going to turn into a hot war. There's going to be a shooting war between the two sides, and so a lot of the UFO UAP people that are out there really present the evil beings as the American corporate military industrial alliance. And
Yeah.
that's just not true. What basically it is that there's a lot of people out there in the UAP, UFO phenomena that say all the ETs are good, and the only thing that's bad is the military industrial complex. But that's just not the case. The as above, so below. It's the same up there as
You know what, folks? I've just quick break there. That's that really resonates with me because I think it's within nature to have ups and downs. And if you pile 300 random, 400, 500, whatever number it is, if you pile random people together, a certain percentage of people will have genuine ideology and genuine um, feelings about everyone, their current situation, you know. And then you'll have other people that just won't care about anyone, won't care about anything, won't respect anyone, won't respect anything. And I'm not sure on percentage wise, if you took 300 people, how many would be, you know, negative and how many would be positive? Let's say that. But you could sure as hell bet that if you've got a government like in the UK, if you've got 400, 500 people in Parliament or 1,000 seats in Parliament or whatever number it is, you can bet your money that a large portion of them will be good and a large portion of them will be bad. It just depends on what portion is good and what portion is bad and how much power they have. So that's always a good place to sort of start when you're trying to judge who's who. You can kind of like take a number and go, well, a certain percentage or a certain portion of people will be thinking a certain way, and another certain percentage will be thinking another way, at the very least. And that's how you dissect. And I'm a firm believer that people can change as well. So a lot of how society plays out and how we're introduced into the world and then how we're brought up into the world determines how we end up, at least on this planet. Okay, we may have our traits which may stick around with us for a long time, but I've seen people change for the better, so it is possible. But let's continue. I just think what he said there was spot on, that the people that control us also have people within the establishment that want this all out, and I think that's important. Let's continue.
It is down here. There's good guys and there's bad guys, and there's people who like free will, and they have their own whole civilizations, and they have people who are more authoritarian and fascist oriented. Neither side can defeat the other, so it's basically a standoff. But this planet is run by the bad ETs. The good ETs are actually militarily dominant in the solar system, but
In our solar system right
yeah,
now, right?
they have pushed an enormous amount of resources into the solar system right now because they're expecting this Cold War to pop into a hot war very soon. And but they have to do it gently because they have to do it in a very strategic way. They can't just march in and sort of knock the bad ETs out. You just can't do that because the bad ETs, they're dominant here, and if the good ETs invaded, the humans would look up and say, "Oh my gosh, we're being invaded! Help!" And then the U.S. government and all other governments would be called to shoot down the good ETs. It would reverse everything. So they can't just invade. And in addition, if the bad ETs were going to be destroyed, they would blow up the planet because they can keep all the ISBs. They recycle them. They can capture them. They can just move the whole show over to another planet. All the billions of people. So they wouldn't blink about destroying the entire planet, and then it would say, "Okay, you thought you could do that? We taught you a lesson now," and that would produce a tremor of fear that would go throughout the galaxy. So the good ETs just can't invade. They have to get to a situation in which the bad ETs lose control over the population. And so when the bad ETs lose control over the population, the only way that can happen is if there is full disclosure. And I mean full, complete disclosure. And then all these stuff of secrecy would come out. And then the bad ETs literally couldn't control the planet because it is a psychological prison. It's not a prison that runs with bars and people being locked up in cells. This is a psychological prison. And so once the disclosure process fully happens, then the bad ETs really can't control the planet, and then they would be confronted with a militarily superior force of the good ETs, and they said, "Well, if we fight it out, we will lose ships and personnel. For what reason? We can't control the planet anymore, so it's a lost cause." And that the plan is that will cause the bad ETs to withdraw. So you're not going to kill them all. You have to come up with some strategy to get them to go. And the only way they can do that is if they voluntarily go. And the only way that would happen is if they can't control the planet and they're faced with a military force that would end up destroying a lot of their ships and personnel. So that's what the game is. That's the game plan. And there are very few access points where the good ETs have direct interactions with humans. Farsight is one of them. But the bad ETs have lots of access points for working with humans, because they are deeply involved with the part of the U.S. military, for example, that's involved with tech transfer. A lot of this goes on at the deeper levels of Area 51 and many other places. But the good ETs do have some access, and Farsight is one of those. And we kept it secret for actually a few decades, but we have direct interactions with the good ETs. We meet and we have meetings on a regular basis. It took a while for all of our people to get used to dealing with that. It's one thing for our people to do remote viewing. That's another thing entirely when they're sitting right next to an ET. I mean, that's remote
Yeah.
viewing. You're perceiving something on the other side of the planet or on another planet, something like that, or in a UFO ship. But when you're talking about, an actual physical interaction, that's a different thing. The other thing is that we have no secrecy. So we are purposely, it was in January of 2022, the decision was made to spill the beans on everything. So the good ETs would like to have extensive contacts with zillions of people, but it's very difficult for them. But they have, Farsight is one of the access points. That's why we're still here. The US military has crushed almost all UFO groups that are out there. Any serious group I have been in meetings. I won't mention the actual names of the meetings, but of the groups. But I've been in scientific meetings of scientific organizations, and I see the military people walking the halls, and they're doing everything they possibly can to put pressure to make sure the debates never get out of hand, that no one actually talks about real life on places like Mars or anything like that. I have seen these people. I know their names. I interact with them. They don't like me. I don't like them. But they control those meetings, and they put a lot of resources into controlling those meetings and those people. So the good ETs have a very difficult time sort of getting sort of access to the intellectual powerhouse. There's no access to the universities. I'm the only university professor, even though I don't talk about this stuff at my university. I'm the last one standing. John Mack, he died. Um, David M. Jacobs, he's retired now. I'm the last one standing, fully tenured professor. I don't deal with this stuff. I don't talk about this stuff at the university, but nonetheless, I'm the only university professor that talks on this level. Now, there are some that are starting to come out. Gary Nolan, for example, he's starting to come out and talk about interesting things. But there's very few of us. And in terms of the people talking about direct evidence of the ETs, the extraterrestrials, and what they're doing, it's me. So it's a very difficult thing. But let me say this, Michael. If you were if you were in a group of extraterrestrials, would you just come across the entire galaxy to get here just to fly around in spaceships and look at people? Obviously, they're going to
No,
try to.
I wouldn't. Yeah.
They're going to try. Obviously, if they're coming here, they're going to try to interact with people. So they interact with one of two people. They interact with the government, military people that are doing tech transfer under total secrecy, and they interact with people like us who are willing to learn how to interact with them on their terms. It's complicated, but there's not. And our role at Farsight is to use remote viewing to develop a huge library of material that answers all of their questions about what the BTs have been doing all these thousands of years. And that's where farsightprime.com comes in. It's a huge library of projects, over 100 projects, where we talk about everything involving.
Yeah, it's fascinating, guys. I can't tell you enough. You got to get over there and check it out. It really is unbelievable.
Right, folks. So I won't play it all because I do think you guys should get over to Conflict Radio Official and check out the video. It was only posted 4 days ago, and there's so much more to go through. It was a bombshell video, and yeah, I mean, lots to digest, but if we take UFOs seriously, and if you're not sure, go back over to the video that I last posted. Get the evidence you need, do some more research. Once you've established that UFOs are real, look into remote viewing. Again, channel link will be in the description. So take a look at this chap. It's an absolutely amazing interview. Thank you, Conflict Radio. I hope you don't mind me sharing it with my channel and my viewers. It ties in perfectly with what we saw. If you go on further into the interview, he talks about types of craft, and I like to connect the dots. So from what he was saying, the type of craft we saw in Wales was reptilian built. Okay, that's all we've got time for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a massive interview. Please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and please like and subscribe to the new channel. All the best, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.